Well, I've been probably, well, I will go a little by background. First of all, I've been an elected official since the State House for 10 years, State Senate for 8, got elected treasurer in 2010. But simultaneous to that, I never was a career legislator, I was a citizen legislator. And I bring that up intentionally because obviously some of the banter going on in the political scene are about politicians and longevity and that kind of thing. So I've been a citizen legislator, had been with the Service Master Corporation for 25 years. So what's that? Whatever, I started in Service Master and then later was elected and went half salary with the company, but I was able to still stay with them and do that. Later I was able to become the vice president of international for the corporation. And I'm telling you all this because it leads back to where I'm going to go for governor. During that time we acquired a company called Terminex Pest Control, True Green Lawn Care, Mary Mays, which the company eventually grew to be the largest service company in America with a large number of employees, but yet working with very small businesses, individual franchisees with 2 or 3 or 4 employees. My role there was to help negotiate our license entries into other countries, Philippines, Honduras, Czechoslovakia when it was still Czechoslovakia, and you know, all of those kind of things. And early on in life, my mom and dad had a small business in Pontiac, a pizza place, opened in the early 60s, and worked there as a kid. You know, you had to miss Friday night footballs because you were working at the pizza restaurant, actually waited on tables, ran the cash register where you actually gave change back without having the computer tell you how much to have to give back, those kind of things. The reason I give you that whole skill set that I bring to being governor is the fact that, you know, I do have legislative experience, having been in the minority party of the chambers all the 2 years I was there, having understand the personalities, the idiosyncrasies, the process, and even getting into the minutia, the more complicated areas such as the administrative code, the Joint Committee Administrative Rules. You have a law, but yet you have to implement the rules. So I mean, I understand and have dealt with all that. And my background in the private sector, I believe, brings a skill set of negotiating contracts in parts of the world that really good people would negotiate. And having been in countries and been involved with business where Caucasian is the minority, where Christianity is the minority. And I present that because recognizing the diversity of Illinois, I think having those kind of experiences in Latin countries, Asian countries, Eastern European countries, lends an understanding of the really great deal of diversity that we have here. And then the other part of it, the skill set I bring, having been, you know, a young kid that went to school, as Bernie knows, at Illinois State University, shoveled asphalt during the summers to make money, worked at Avani's to make money, was an RA in the residence halls to make money, and did all of that at a time while still going full-time to school, and I was able to do it. Mom and Dad helped my first semester freshman year, but after that I paid my entire way through college, and I did without any student loans. And yes, it was very, very hard. So now, in today's world, my nephew who's recently graduated from Illinois State University, like many students that go to college today, they can't do it. No matter how many times they work during the summers and how hard they work during the school year, you can't basically get through without student loans. And so I see that having been an experience in my life, and I'd like to make that better by the time I become the governor. And the other thing is, you know, this is a state that's been very blue, and until Judy Barr, Mark Kirk, and I got elected in 2010, we made it a dark purple state. You know, I've said proudly that I'm the only Republican running for governor that's actually been able to win in this state. So I will run through the politics to it if I may. When I ran in 2010, every single constitutional officer was a Democrat from Chicago. The Speaker of the House, the President of the Senate, the President of the United States were all Democrats from Chicago. I'm a Central Illinois guy, Republican, and decided to run. My opponent was an African-American female, City of Chicago Democrat, with an Irish last name. So I also was running for an office that in 40 years, both between comptroller and treasurer, before me, only 3 Republicans had ever been elected. George Lindbergh, Lolita Dietrichson, and Judy Barr. I won. And the point on the statistics were that if you don't win 20% of Chicago, you know, less Menard County, Sacramento County, and Livingston County, if you don't get 20 out of the city itself, you're not going to win. It just hasn't happened in 100 years. And I was able to garner 22% of the vote. And I tell you who the profile of my opponent was, which...
Well, she lived in Madison, right? Robin, you said City of Chicago Democrat. She's from the south suburbs.
Well, okay, so, fair enough.
Okay.
All right, so a south suburban Chicago
There you go.
Democrat.
There you go.
And
Robin Keller.
yet we were able to garner 22% of the vote. My Republican candidate for governor that year got 18, and we won and he lost. And 4 people were running, Democrat, Republican, Green, and Libertarian. We got 50% of the vote in a 4-way race. Governor Quinn ran 4-way race, Democrat, Republican, Green, and Libertarian. He didn't get 50% of the vote. There were 3.8 million people that voted in that election. 83,000 less people voted for treasurer than voted for governor. And yet, you know, it's not apples to apples, but yet we were able to garner 66,000 more votes than Governor Quinn did running with 83,000 less participating. I was sworn in January of 2011. One day after I was sworn in, they voted for the income tax increase. And I saw then and there that this is going to be a problem because all they did was raise money and didn't resolve the overall problem. You know, our outstanding bills at that time were $8.5 billion. Raise income tax 2 years later, January 2013, outstanding bills is $9 billion. So I could see right there what they did was just bring in money and didn't do a package of trying to resolve the overall. And that's why I decided I'm going to run for governor.
Your week has been somewhat bumpy. What is the status of your campaign right now? Has it changed at all?
Well, the status of the campaign is we're full steam ahead. Our television commercials are starting soon. Our field operation is in full bore. We're doing our meet and greets, our fundraisers. We're out there right at it now. I am, you know, responding and being very open about what's going on. And we have an investigation. We brought in an outside individual to conduct that. It's taking place right now. I have suggested that we have it the resolution as rapidly as possible, but not at the expense of thoroughness. So as soon as we can have it prepared, I'm looking forward to having that be done.
Have you considered dropping? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Have I considered dropping out? No.
Yes. Okay.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. You know, the allegations are not true. We've had our general counsel review them. We've had our external labor attorney review them, and they are absolutely not true. Now, it makes it very difficult for me to sit here and talk to you or go on television or visit on a radio when I cannot mention the accuser's name, background, nor the accusations. It makes it very hard. And the part that I find totally unseemly is the fact that this all came up just about 6 weeks before the election. And I think it was totally politically motivated, and I think that there is a greater story to this that will eventually come out.
The letter that got posted on Illinois Review and since made the rounds to places including in front of me, is that an authentic letter?
Is the name of the accuser redacted?
It is.
Then I'm not able to comment on it.
That's who I think
Bernie,
it is.
I'm going to tell you, and I understand what your role needs to be, but also we've got a personnel matter going on. I cannot discuss the accuser nor the allegations because it's an internal personnel issue.
How long do you think that investigation will take, given that, you know, the campaign is going on? Is there hope, a timetable that you hope for?
I want to be very careful because if I say one and it's not there, then, you know, what's going on? I would hope that we could have it very soon. And that's about as close as I can try to nail it down. I mean, very soon for lots of reasons. I mean, I want it very soon just so we can, you know, have this out there and be able to address it the longer it carries on. You know, it just puts me in a more challenged situation in regards to being able to comment about it.
How long has Kyle Ham been your chief of staff?
Since the day we came office.
You mentioned college affordability. What can the governor do to help?
Well, two things. One, as a part of the overall where we are in regards to appropriations. And, you know, we could talk about how much we approach to higher ed, But then it also becomes a part of the discussion, how much do you approach to Medicaid? How much do you approach to schools? How much do you approach to public safety, natural resources? You go down all that. So it needs to be part of a collective package when we start looking at the appropriation standpoint. And education, both elementary, secondary, pre-K, vocational technical training, and community colleges are a part of that whole discussion. So one is be sensitive and attempting there. But the other part of it is the MAP grant funding, the monetary awards, and the fact that basically we've seen what's happened now is it's limited, and students that apply for it first ones get it, then it depletes itself, and if you're not there in the queue, then you don't get it. So what's happened is that we find a lot of the universities accept students and they can go through the MAP grant application earlier. The community college system, though, by the system timings they go through things, it is later that they accept students, and students know if they're going to go there and be able to apply for MAP. And what we've learned is that a lot of the MAP funds have been depleted before the community college students are able to really get into the understanding if they're going to have the opportunity to go to school there. So I'm not sure the total answer to it, but that's of concern to me. Part of it is, are there funds available to accelerate the amount that could be in MAP, but also, should there be some allocation, I'm not suggesting it, but this is the kind of discussion I want to have, reserved for some of the community college students so that it's not depleted before they get to the point of having the opportunity to apply. Because, albeit, I'm very supportive of our university system and higher ed, I happen to be an extremely strong supporter of our community college system, because I think it's going to allow not just young people, but people that maybe are able to go on after a few years in their life to go on and get further types of education and eventually be able to attain certain skill sets to be able to go into the job market and perhaps even move on into, if they desire at some point, a 4-year university. So those are the two areas that I'd be most sensitive to in talking about the example we just brought up.
If I could get back just to a little bit of this other stuff. You accused Bruce Rauner of being behind this allegation because the lawyer for the person had done some work, which they say...
That's one.
What else is there?
I think the fact that, this isn't one of those where Bruce Rauner says, okay, I'm behind it. But you put all of the scenarios out there. One is the fact that she did do work with him. The other is the fact that there was an outside committee that ran ads against Aaron Schock, attempting to keep him out of, purportedly, from the governor's race. All right, now, is Bruce Rauner's fingerprints directly on that? No. Are there lots of understandings to believe why he would want to do it? Yes.
Bruce and Steve Shares has basically accused him of doing that. Again, with no proof.
I understand that. There is now another outside committee, another super PAC that is now formed, that is running negative ads on television.
The Mid-America Fund, I think the one with the three of you having 60 years of, Springfield.
I'm not sure the name of it, but so you've got another super PAC out there that's running negative ads against the 3 candidates for governor, not Bruce Rauner. So it's just pretty obvious who's behind these kind of things.
Do you think Bruce Rauner is behind that?
I do think Bruce Rauner. Yes, I do think Bruce Rauner is behind that.
And behind the Aaron Schock attack ads too?
I would believe that as well. Okay. Also, when you get Chicago television reporter asking me directly, do I believe or am I aware that Rauner's campaign are shopping stories to the Chicagoland media? I said I don't have any substantiation to it, but the fact that he even poses that a question from his understanding of what's going on, I'm not going to tell you.
Well, why wouldn't you say if that's...
I'm not going to tell you until I talk with him. Okay. And if he goes on the record with it, then that's his opportunity to do so. You take that, and the purported, where he's at in regards to basically having been said, so I understand these are chatter mills, but you look at everything going on out there, that he's going to destroy his opponents. So, I strongly believe that Bruce Rauner is behind this, because you look at all of these factors going on out there, and then you look at the timing for all this stuff, and the allegations are not true, which I can't, be able to tell you right now because of the personnel side to it. Yes, I believe Bruce Rauner is behind this.
Have you ever, in your opinion, pressured anyone on your staff to work in your campaign?
Absolutely no.
Okay. Obviously, the other part of this letter is a sexual harassment charge. Anything like that from you to any of your employees?
Absolutely not.
You have, when Grant Hammer came on and I did a story on him running for park board, and I found out that there were like 6 or 7 people on your logistics staff getting you around the state. You have a lot of people on your staff who come from politics.
Okay, let's go back on the logistics side of it, though. Just to be sure we got what that is. These are people that don't just do stuff for the treasurer. They're the ones that put together the various programs out there. And under the division or department, whatever it's called, was called logistics. So it isn't just stuff for the treasurer. It's all of the events that we do, whether they're iCash or Bright Start 529, the community fairs, all of those things. So, I mean, when you start to look at those, yes. Go ahead, what was your question?
I just, other treasurer, Neil Hartigan had, Attorney General, he had offices all across the state. Many people hire people who work on campaigns, but you've hired a lot of people with a lot of campaign experience to work in the treasurer's office, I assume. And I have great respect and friendship for those, including Kurt, who used to be the executive director of the Republican Party. Mm-hmm. You've got Rob Winchester, whose dad is on the State Central Committee. You've got Grant, who I first met when he was working for Andy McKenna's campaign. You've got Frank Lesko off of our city council. You've got Marty Morris, who worked for Governor Quinn. How interesting is that? Known media people like Mary Frances Bragel and Katie Sheehan, and you've got Lori Yates, who worked for Aaron Schock. Why does the treasurer need so many political people if you're supposed to be husbanding the funds of the state?
Well, I'm not suggesting that they're just political people. They've got great skill sets. I mean, I wouldn't consider Katie Sheehan to be a political person. I wouldn't consider
she's on
Mary
the county board now.
Well, she is on the county board now.
Yeah, I know that came.
Okay,
that came
and I
around.
would surely not consider Mary Frances Bragel a political person. I mean, she was a reporter that maybe covered politics. So, Bernie, I think you're making a bit of a stretch there. And these are people that've got skill sets and talents, and they do a great job for the treasurer's office.
So why do you think Bruce Rauner is going after you? He has far and away more money than any of the candidates. Why
Sure.
did he pick you to go after?
Well, because I'm the guy that's got the next most amount of money. I think he sees us as the viable threat. We've got financial resources, and I say this with respect to my two Senate friends. They haven't been able to put it together. We've got the financial resources to be able to go into the media markets. We've got the field organization, and polling shows that we're the either number one or number two guy with regards to Republican nominations. So I'm as the Japanese phrase goes, the standing nail gets pounded.
Do you think he'll go after the other two?
Well, some committee on the outside has gone after all three of us and not Mr. Rauner, so maybe it started.
But by the way, the lawyer has indicated to other reporters, I guess, for this employee of yours that a lawsuit might be filed Friday. There might be more names. Are you given any advance notice of that beyond what has been in the press, and the effect of that will be what, if it happens?
We're moving forward.
Moving forward on other topics, the tax.
Thank you.
and are you?
And I say thank you because there are many things that are important in regards to what we're going to do in the governor's office. So
there's a lot of issues, and we cover them.
That's
in
right.
These things, but the tax, are you favor that to expire? And if you do, where would that revenue come from?
I mean, here, I don't want it to stay. And, as I've said many a time, I'll say 3 times, I don't want it to stay, I don't want it to stay, I don't want it to stay. So everybody gets it. But I'm not ready to make a commitment that there may not need to be some form of revenue in the discussion to financially put Illinois back into the right stead come January 2015. And I go back to my initial comment regarding the tax increase in January 2011. That raised money. It wasn't a resolution. And because, again, my background in negotiating contracts, I know that you can't just agree to one thing and hope the rest of it's going to come along. You have to put a comprehensive package together in a contract. So I think when Governor Quinn and the General Assembly passed the revenue, they didn't deal with the other components that were essential to have had brought about a financial resolution to Illinois' problems. One of them was the state public pension bill. That was two and a half years, whatever, after the income tax increase, before anything was actually passed. I'm assuming we may want to talk about that later today, too. That should have been done at that time. Now, I understand how politically complicated and challenging that is, but just to say you're going to bring in revenue, while one of the major issues to had been addressed from a financial standpoint was the state pensions. That should have been a part of the package. And that's where, come January of 2015, when I am the governor, I don't want that income tax increase to stay, but there may need to be some form of revenue in the mix to be able to address and everything else, where we're going to go to move Illinois forward. How are we going to pay for the outstanding bills if that $4.5 billion goes off the table? What are we going to do in regards to MAP funding? Where are we at in regards to the, it'll be a year, but will the state public pension bill be found to be constitutional? If it's not, that puts a whole different political and financial dynamic on what I'm going to have to do as the governor. Where are we in regards to Medicaid? I mean, all the candidates and everybody talks about, well, Medicaid fraud, we want to cut back on it and fix it and all. Okay, we all do. But will it be substantively addressed in the next year? Because if it's not, that is the other major financial situation that we're going to have to address. So I guess it's one of those issues that I don't want to have to keep that tax there, and I'll repeat it maybe the third time now, but I may need to have some form of revenue as a part of the financial package to solve this problem.
Which means what?
Well, it means any other options. It could be a piece of an income tax, it could be a temporary, it could be deal with any other type of potential revenue out there.
Are you broadening the base of the sales tax? Have you said that that's a possibility to
And
services?
I do not support broadening the sales tax on
Right, you're the one
services.
that did not the other day, right?
I don't know if I'm the only one, but I am one. I know I don't.
And progressive income tax, are you
I do
opposed to
not
that idea?
support that. I do not support that.
So would you potentially wish to have it extended?
It depends on what the package is. It totally depends on what the package is. There may be a piece of it, maybe temporary part of it, maybe something. It depends on what the entire package is.
And you have said that you believe, I heard this in Sherman, you believe the constitutionality of the pension law fix will be found to be unconstitutional, correct?
I do not believe the bill that was passed is going to meet constitutional muster.
And so then do you have what the next step should be to the solution of the long-term pension problem?
If it is found to be unconstitutional by the time I'm the governor of Illinois, what I will do is put everything on the table. And this is not a new statement from Dan Rutherford. I said this at the City Club of Chicago. It's on their videotape. I said everything will need to be on the table. Everything. Everything from age to contribution to COLAs to health care, everything will need to be on the table and negotiate a comprehensive package.
But-
And the parties will be at the table. And as the governor, I'll be at the table. Unlike this governor who basically abdicated that responsibility to the General Assembly, who then put a bill on his desk.
And if there is some diminishment of benefits, you think that through negotiation, that would be a way to get it through without being challenged in court? Because I'm sure even if the unions agree to it, some employee out there will not agree to it and sue you anyway. And if there is diminution of benefits, is that still constitutional in any way?
I happen to believe that there needs to be consideration and acceptance. Now, who represented how, that'll be a legal question. If you have a let's say a union or a group that represents who is identified to be the collective group, and someone individually wants to sue, I'm not sure what the legal ramifications are to that are, but we need to move it forward.
So, Treasurer, could you have supported the 2404?
Doug, help me, what, was that the Cullerton bill?
Pension reform bill that Cullerton negotiated with the union.
I want to be careful to say an absolute yes, but that would be much closer to the type of package that I would think that could pass.
But the main criticism of that was it also did not save anywhere near as much money as the plan that ultimately did pass.
Well, I don't refute that, but you have to pass a bill that's going to be constitutional regardless of wishing it could save more.
But would that in turn pretty much lock in the income tax increase?
Again, as I've answered this question earlier, it needs to be a part, from the financial standpoint, the complete package. Again, the revenue that's there, and let me just back up. We're where we are in pensions because there was past governors, past general assemblies, past negotiations, whatever, that came to that agreement. Now, whether those agreements were what should have been or not, they are the agreement. And now we're down the road where we are, and it is a problem. I think everyone self-admits it, and I totally do acknowledge it. But you just cannot unilaterally go back and say, we didn't like what was done, so we're unilaterally going to go and just change it. You have got yourself an agreement, contractual agreement in place that I believe that you have to negotiate. And again, like it or not where it is what it is. And the reason that we are where we are is really three factors, in my opinion. Number one, General Assemblies and governors of the past did not put in what they should have. And I've checked my voting record as a member of the General Assembly. I did not vote for a budget that did not fully fund the state pensions. Number two, the governing boards of these pension entities were estimating rates of return that were much beyond what reality was. So when you estimate a rate of return that is nowhere near what's going to come to be reality, that exacerbates the problem. The third factor, this is one that's okay, is we're just living longer. So, I mean, everybody has some skin in this game as to where we are in the problem. And when it ultimately gets down to it, we've got agreements in place. Whether you like them or not, they are the agreements in place. So you have to renegotiate a new type of contractual agreement.
Bill Brady was here yesterday. One of the things he said was that he would like to abolish the State Board of Education. Do you agree with that? Make it a department instead, or otherwise?
And make it a department instead?
He would make it a department under the governor, smaller than the State Board is now.
Okay, now I will be very careful to respond because that is the first time I've heard that part of it. And I'm not suggesting that he hasn't.
I've heard him say it a few times.
Okay, well, I've heard the idea of abolishing the State Board. The question I'd have to have answers to before I concur or not is what happens? You know,
Yeah,
where do
he
those...
He said a smaller department under the governor.
Okay.
And then so you could actually have the policy instead of everybody, he says now the board attacks the governor for not proposing enough, and the legislature attacks the board, and there's too many places up, although I realize it was set up by the Constitution just to have that kind of clash. But anyway, education...
Well, just by the way, just by your explanation, it seems pretty complicated.
Well, it would be...
But no, I mean, see what I'm saying, though?
Yeah.
Just by your explanation, it is complicated. So, no, I am not going to sit here and say, without having a thorough understanding of what alternatives would be, where those responsibilities would go, what ramifications it has on our educational system, am I ready to say, I embrace abolishing the State Board?
Okay, what about school funding itself, which is something in the low 30%, 32% or so of funding for schools comes from the state now. The Constitution talked about more than that, predominant responsibility. What should be done in the field of education if you're governor?
Well, with regards to the funding side of it, let's go back to the issues we talked about a little bit ago. That's going to have to be a part of the comprehensive package. Will the state pension bill be found constitutional or not? Rutherford doesn't want the income tax increase to stay, but he is at least bold enough to say some form of revenue may need to be a part of the discussion. And then you get to everything that all the other factors I set out there, higher education, nuclear safety, all of those. I can understand a pandering comment. I understand politics. And you can say, I'm going to increase education funding. Well, you know what? I want to increase education funding. And then you go down the street and you're talking to the person in the nursing home. And the reimbursement rates for long-term skilled care isn't keeping up. Okay, I want to increase funding for the long-term skilled care. So I believe I'm being one of the most candid ones about this. It's going to have to be a part of a comprehensive package. Yes, I want to increase education funding. And a fair answer back then is, well, how are you going to do it? Then it goes back to the fact of, what about the income tax increase? Well, you know what? I don't want it to stay, but it's going to have, I may have to have some form of revenue.
And your opponents, I think all of them, and I'll check that before I wrote it, but say let it expire or even come down now.
The income tax?
Yes.
Okay.
And are they, why is what you're saying more palatable to voters, even Republican voters, to say, hey, we may need to keep it? Because part of their argument is that will spur business growth, therefore the tax base will increase, more people will be paying taxes, and therefore everything will be rosier on the fiscal side. Is that a realistic plan?
I will just tell you that my contention is, if you immediately withdraw 4.5, whatever the number will be, 5.3, say $5 billion, which is about 1/7 of the general revenue appropriations, I will find it abundantly difficult to think that you will be able to put together a fair system that year coming into the appropriation year. And here, I'm a state treasurer that's been able to, in his first year in office, cut our general revenue spending by 2%. Second year, 3%. We're coming in with a 5% cut now. And that's 10%. While maintaining very high standards of performance in our unclaimed property. I mean, it has gone off the charts. When I became the treasurer of Illinois, My predecessor's last year in office was returning $82 million. Good. Our first full year in office, we returned $101 million. Last year we returned, and I'll be off by a couple million, but I think it was $136 or $139 million. That's money that belongs to people that went back into their purses and wallets. And yes, we've done a lot of iCash programs. I've been to a lot of them. And when I go back and I ask my staff, why are we watching and enjoying these dramatic increases in the amount of claims and dollars we're returning? And these come from people that were there before Treasurer Rutherford. The answer is absolutely because the treasurer himself is in the market and drawing attention to it, and people are much more aware of it from a high visibility. The other is our Bright Start 529.
Yeah, how is
We have
Bright
now-
Start doing?
Bright Start has just reached about $6 billion in investments. When I became the treasurer, it was about 3.7. Again, maybe it was 3.5, but I mean in that range there. The number of our accounts have gone up dramatically. It's been hugely successful. I brought in a new director of the program. Our investment portfolio, that's the core of what I do as treasurer. These other items are retail. The wholesale part of the shop as state treasurer is the state portfolio, and our standards, or I'm sorry, our performance is meeting and exceeding national standards. So all of these are taking place while we're still able to cut back in our overall spending. And so now I go back to the original question you were talking about. You have to put together a comprehensive program to deal with education funding and where you're going to be at on the revenue side of the picture.
Senator Menard and
Luchtefeld?
David
Yeah.
Luchtefeld?
Luchtefeld have come up with a plan for putting more money into the state formula and less into extraneous, as they would describe funding education.
Categoricals?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's categorical, so I'm not quite sure. In any event, what do you think about that approach to trying to normalize
Sure.
state aid formula distribution?
You know, I would be open to it if we're talking categoricals. I mean, you're going to have winners and losers. If you do change that, you're going to have winners or losers. And a part of that is going to have to be looked at as an overall package again. I mean, categoricals are, you know, special education, transportation, poverty grants, those kind of things. So it's, when you move it into the formula, you take away and you need to analyze what those results will be. But I would definitely be open to the discussion of trying to see what we can do to put it more into a formula as opposed to a category.
I know, being from Pontiac originally, you've lived through like the horrible '78 riot at Pontiac Prison.
Right.
And we've closed some prisons under Governor Quinn, and since the anyway, what should be done in the future has
Sure.
have two. And I know that, you know, you talk about doing more evaluation before any closure, but prisons in particular, are the right number of buildings open now, and is the staff level adequate now, and what should be done about
Well,
that?
I can only go back to what the Auditor General of Illinois has said, in the fact that we are abundantly overcrowded in the certified bed spaces within our correctional system. That isn't a subjective decision or discussion. That's an objective analysis from the Auditor General of Illinois. So I've got to believe that he is right. The the challenge I see is back when Rod Blagojevich stood up and said he's going to close Vandalia and he's going to close the Roundhouse up by Joliet, and then a few weeks later said, no, I'm not going to close the Roundhouse. Instead, I'm going to close Pontiac. You know, you see these kind of announcements, you step back and you go, okay, number one, what's the logic? And number two, what methodology did one go through to make those decisions, or were they somewhat arbitrary? I get a feeling about Blagojevich, but that is a story unto its own right. When you look at Governor Quinn's announcements of the closing of Jacksonville facility, Dwight facility, TAMS, and others, the challenge, the problem I have is I don't see that these are put together with an actual strategic long-range plan with regards to the assets of our state. Meaning, I strongly believe a governor should have and would retain the authority to close state facilities. I don't think that's an authority we should take from the governor. We do have a process in place for COGFA and the reviews and those things. And I think that's a good process. But what I will do as the governor, and it's not just because I said it now, I said it back then, is what I will do as your governor is I will put together long-range strategic plans for the capital assets of our state. This will be done not with additional consultants and so forth, but Department of Corrections and Mental Health and all of the others to put together, are these assets being deployed in the most efficient way possible for the services that are to be delivered and for the taxpayers for that asset. I will give you a couple of examples. In that, under Governor Ryan closed the Sheridan Correctional Center up in LaSalle County. Now, I believe the governor should have the authority to do that. Was that the right thing to do or not? That was a debate and discussion that had to take place. But what happened was it took 2.5 years for this asset to sit there before anything was done with it. It is now being used for a drug rehab operation, which I understand is doing a good job. But the point is, here's 2.5 years of an asset that sat there, that somebody had to mow the yard and flush the toilets. Employees were not working, and we had an asset that wasn't being used. Today we have a geriatric population in our correctional system that's growing. The type of physical structure to incarcerate a geriatric inmate is different than the type of facility you would need to have to incarcerate a younger inmate. So, and believe me, don't put this down as Rutherford as governor believes we should do this, but this is the thing I will think about. If the roundhouse was not structurally put in place that's the best for use for violent criminals, should it then be used perhaps for deployed as a geriatric?
Is that at Pontiac?
No, the roundhouse is up by Joliet. I think it's Crest Hill.
Okay.
I say Crest Hill. I know it's Joliet area.
Okay.
And that's the kind of thinking. Right now, Jacksonville Developmental Center. Okay, it's closed, right? What's going to happen? Nobody knows. I mean, we know that the population is being transitioned elsewhere. The employees aren't working, and we have an asset of the people of Illinois that's sitting there. And so my point is, starting from our larger state facilities, all of them, and then we work our way to the smaller ones over the years that I'm governor, is you actually analyze and you say, are we deploying them in the most efficient way possible? If so, great. If not, what do we do to put them into alternative and varied uses? And I think, Bernie, that'll go to the point of where we are in the overcrowded situation. TAM's correctional facility was built for a purpose, and I was very supportive of the construction of TAM's. I am supportive of having the type of TAM's facility in the inventory of incarceration we have available. That was built for the worst of the worst, and it is now closed, and we've got the crowded situation once again. I will evaluate those as a part of an asset to see what's the best use for them.
Would you possibly reopen that to
give
it its former purpose?
Again, don't want you to put in the paper that Rutherford's going to open TAM's, because then everybody either says, oh, woe is me, or do happy dances. I believe it is fair for any asset of the people of Illinois to have a fair evaluation as to what the deployment should be. That'll include Jacksonville, it'll include Murray, it'll include TAM's, it'll include all of those.
By the way, sorry, bring another candidate in, but Senator Brady just said yesterday he might consider selling the state of Illinois, the Thompson Center in Chicago, and then renting space in it for that, which is actually needed. Any thoughts on that? Which reminded me of another governor that talked about that once, Mr. Blagojevich.
Bill's a real estate developer. I would, all options would be out there. I mean, it's an asset of Illinois. All options are out there.
Are you a person who believes that Illinois is fraught with wasteful spending and programs?
Yeah, this is an easy populist answer. By golly, yes, we got all kinds of waste, we got all kinds of fraud, and we got all kinds of things like that. Let's just say that as governor of Illinois, I'm going to take a very, very performance review attitude to our government. And I use that term, performance review, because you've got auditors, auditor generals, internal auditors, all of those kind of things. I believe it is fair, like I did in the office of Illinois State Treasurer, to have a performance review, not done by consultants, but by volunteers outside, from religious groups to unions to labor to management, all of the education, to look at all the programs of government. Do we have programs that are redundant? Do we have programs that are being duplicated? So I think that kind of a performance review is something that I will do. And as you see how I'm answering this in a way that's not the easy populist way to say, by gosh, yeah, I'm going to go out there and find the fraud and cut it. Well, yes, I am. But there's also, there's a process to go through to make sure that we accomplish that.
Let's move to jobs and job growth and how you would do that.
Sure.
And also whether you would support the corporate tax cut that is out there right now.
Sure. If I could respond to that part first.
Okay.
All right, when the speaker put out his proposal or bill, I said, I like the way he's thinking. I want to be able to reduce taxes. I want to be able to do it particularly on business. But that said, what does that mean in the whole package? And I'm going back to everything else I've themed out to you before. You just can't do one thing and hope the rest of it comes along. It fits into the greater mosaic of what we've got to try to accomplish. So attitudinally, I'm for it. Now, with regards to jobs and job growth, there are many factors, and having been involved in business, there are many factors that a company will look at for a location site or expansion. Part of it is taxes, part of it is the property tax, part of it is workers' comp, part of it's unemployment insurance, and part of it's available resources of infrastructure and trade.
Sometimes.
Off the record. Excuse me. So then, how do I respond to job growth? I think a part of it will be the regulatory environment that we have here in Illinois, and the implementation of those. I find that particularly for small business, that our regulatory process is abundantly challenging. You know, that you've got to bring in accountants and consultants and lawyers to help you get through it. So I will do three things. Number one, I will be appointing men and women to be directors of state agencies and on the various boards and commissions that will do their role in natural resources and aging and agriculture. They're going to do their role in the efficient and expertise way. But they will also be making a commitment to me down the street on the second floor before I sign their appointment papers that they will do everything within their power to create a job and retain a job and not be the barrier to that job. And I'll give you some examples of that in just a moment. Secondly, my Lieutenant Governor, Steve Kim, who is a business background, an attorney, will be in charge of the Governor's Office of Job Creation and Retention. Not a newly created state agency. He'll use the current appropriations of Lieutenant Governor, but will be able to be the ombudsman for the small and medium-sized business when they have a issue that's out there. Where do they go? What do they do? Okay. Number three, I'm going to be the chief marketing officer of this state, in the fact that having been involved with companies and businesses, you know, I understand what it takes to have the chief executive be the guy that's going to be presenting and representing what Illinois should be about in regards to retaining jobs and creating jobs. So Chris Christie comes flying in from New Jersey and Rick Perry comes parachuting in from Texas to take these jobs to those respective states. I'm going to be the guy that's going to say respectfully, toe-to-toe and nose-to-nose, Illinois is a good place. I think what's going on right now is we got businesses and the public walking around with their head down and avoiding eye contact. Unemployment's high, bond rating's low, all of those things are going on, and there's so much to positive of what Illinois has got to offer that we're not really accolading those. So I will go to those examples. When you have a Kane County florist that tries to go online on the server to pay her quarterly sales tax, the Department of Revenue, and she can't get through on the server of the state of Illinois to pay what was collected and owed, the next day she can and she gets a penalty. Now that's a barrier to a small business. And I thought this might be the one-off story. So I'm in Rock Island County at a trucking company and sharing somewhat of the same story. And in the back of the room, there's a guy sitting where you are like that, and he's starting to go like this. And I look at him, I say, tell me the story. Same thing. He says, we can't get through on the server at the end of the quarter when everybody else is trying to get through. Well, now the answer to that is if you're on American Airlines and you're going to buy a ticket on sale that expires at midnight, you can get through on American Airlines all the way up to midnight. But you can't do that in your own government. So what does that small business do? They will be able to work with the Governor's Office of Job Creation and Retention to have the Lieutenant Governor, who will be a part of the overall administration, help navigate on why we can't have those types of solutions fixed. Now, there's other things out there in the agricultural facility up in Stevenson County and so forth. So I think that's a big start of what I can do. Another area that's of big discussion here in Illinois is our workers' compensation situation. I would like to have causation. I will work with the General Assembly to get it. Now, I am going to assume that the majority party in the House and Senate may well remain Democrat. If that's the case, the ability for me to get through legislation may be more challenged. Okay? Now, I understand as governor that you are not king of the forest, that you can't come into this city and just say, I'm going to make this happen because I am the governor. That is not the democratic process we have here. So I'm going to work towards trying to get it done. But in the same vein, I'm also going to be appointing the members of the Workers' Compensation Review Board, the chairman of the board, and the adjudicators. All of these will be men and women that are abundantly qualified to fulfill those responsibilities, and they must follow the law, and they will follow the rules. But they will also be having it with the attitude of what can I do to have it be least resistant to job creation and retention. So, I mean, a part of a governor's ability to manage the whole government is the type of people with the attitude that they have to put them in those respective places.
What are your thoughts on fracking in Illinois? How comfortable are you with the rules that Illinois is setting up? And also, one more part of that, how do you get resources to these small, rural, struggling communities in Southern Illinois that are going to be having to deal with infrastructure needs because of fracking? So just kind
Give me
of
infrastructure needs, meaning
roads.
Roads, okay.
water.
All right. I am supportive of fracking. I am supportive of fracking that is going to be in a safe, environmental way. The rules themselves, I understand, and believe me, I probably know better than any member of the General Assembly the rulemaking process. I was on JCAR for years. And as governor, if that were to be a part of my administration with it right now, I would make sure that we've had all the experts that we possibly could have in and allow a very, very vocal and healthy debate on both sides of the issue, but having in place rules that will be fair to the capacity of fracking while also being fair to understanding that we want to have a safe environment. We want to be able to have drinking water that's not going to be contaminated, and put together a package like that. With regards to the infrastructure, that if I could even broaden it just a bit, because it isn't just those kind of communities, the same infrastructure stress and pressures are also the major metropolitan when it gets down to mass transit. I mean, so you've got just an overall concept of infrastructure. I see that as being one of the major areas that I need to be working on as your governor. Not because of how many jobs it creates, because you build the road and you put another line on the metro. I mean, those are public pay jobs, and those are nice to have. But it's really about what we do for the private sector. And having a good, healthy mass transit system, respectfully, the major metropolitan just because of the density, but as well here in Springfield, Champaign, Peoria, more of the regional markets, and the road, rail. I put into infrastructure discussion as well, high-speed trunk internet. I think that's almost as important as what our capital brick and mortar type of infrastructure is in today's particularly small business type of environment. I see that as being a major area, and as we're looking to, now let's go to the Southern Illinois fracking part of it, absolutely, there's going to need to be that capacity there, and you can't have a business that's going to hopefully be progressive and successful without having the capacity to support the infrastructure for it.
Could I, interesting way you finished one of the debates I saw when you said, I think more than once, that you are a reasonable Republican, you don't have horns in a tail. What did you mean by that, and what are you saying about statewide electability?
Well, I think that the Republican Party brand right now is pretty damaged, and I think in part of it comes from maybe some in Illinois, but I think part of it comes from the national scene. Part of the reason that I've been able to be elected in this state is I truly have a good understanding of what the diversity is. The diversity of religious groups, whether they're Jewish, Sikh, or the others. I think diversity with regards to ethnicity, whether it's Latino, African American, but particularly the Asian and the Eastern European. And to be, there's social issues out there. I just don't think that is the important thing that people are concerned about in Illinois today. It's about how they're going to have themselves have a job and how their kids going to be able to, have a job when they get out of high school and vocational training and community college and university and be able to stay here in Illinois. That's the most important thing I think the public's thinking about right now. And I think that being someone that's willing to discuss issues from a substance standpoint and not go down the fact of being this hard line, whatever direction it may be, I'm a reasonable Republican.
Okay. You are pro well, you voted for civil unions, you're against gay marriage per se, but that's now the law, and you would they're not gonna repeal it, so I guess I don't know if that's a reasonable question anyway. And abortion, you pro-life?
Pro-life.
Okay. Another kind of question I had, and it has to do with other candidates, but one candidate in particular has a whole lot of money being poured into the campaign versus the others. I guess you're in second place. How skewing is that of the system, and is there anything to do about that? That's just political reality. If somebody has money, the Supreme Court says they can spend as much as they want.
Well, I supported the campaign contribution limits bill. Okay, and that was put into place so that, I don't want to say everybody's on a level playing field, but it kind of helps make it a better level of a playing field. And the maximums, whatever they are. And the advantage that we've enjoyed over the many years is the dramatic number of contributors that are small dollar ones, whether they're $25, $50, or $100. And we've got 26,000 individuals that have donated to the Dan Rutherford Campaign Committee. So that helps you.
Over how many years?
Over the entire life. I mean, that's who's still alive.
Okay.
All right. 26,000. And that's how we're able to build who we are. Mr. Rauner broke the campaign contribution dollar limit by putting in $250,000, which is his constitutional right to be able to do that. I understand it. I'm not going to squabble about it. But I think that what that did, that it does change the intent of what we were attempting to do here in Illinois, is not have large dollars, 6 figures coming in from outside Illinois or interested individuals here to help put in the largesse that one candidate could have.
He's also got that, his other project right now is the term limits bill. Are you for his term limits bill? Or is that just a political ploy? How do you see it?
Well, the package, the package that's in the proposed amendment raises the level for a gubernatorial override from 3/5 to 2/3. I do not support that. I believe that if 3/5 of the House and the Senate believes it's appropriate to override a governor, I think that's a threshold that's appropriate. 2/3, I think, is a bar too high.
So you would vote against that proposal at this point?
Well, let me finish here, Bernie. The and whether you're for concealed carry or not, if that law was in place or that amendment was in place, we wouldn't have concealed carry in the state of Illinois today, because it was not overridden by a 2/3 majority; it was overridden by 3/5. So I don't concur with that. The other is I do not concur with changing the size of the General Assembly by increasing the number of legislative House seats and reducing the number of Senate seats. The reality to it is, by increasing the number of House seats just by population density, we'll put more House members in the Chicago metropolitan market, and diminishing the size of the Illinois Senate will make the downstate Senate districts dramatically geographically larger. And I know, having represented a large geographic Senate district, now I happen to have been in the center of it, but when it takes you 2.5 hours to go from one end of it and 2.5 to 3 the other end of it, if you make that much larger, I just don't see that that's the benefit overall for the public of Illinois. Now, with regards to term limits, I support term limiting the elected leadership of the General Assembly. I see that's where the today issue is. I also support the process to draw legislative maps that take it out of the self-preservation incumbency process and put it in an independent process. That ultimately, in my opinion, is where the solution to this whole issue that we've got here in Illinois is. To allow that drawing of maps, I believe, is truly where it's going to come to the answer to the issue.
So you support the one that they're trying to get on the ballot now?
I totally support it. In fact, I think I was, if I wasn't the first public official to endorse it, I totally support it.
We are starting to wind down. I have
Okay.
3 questions that are
Sure.
of particular local interest. Number 1, the governor's mansion. If you're elected, would you be spending any time there?
Well, the answer is yes. Now here's the populace. Roar. Yes, I will reside there, and yes, I will be there, particularly when the session is going on. Now, out of respect, there's a lot of Illinois that's Chicago metropolitan, and there's a lot of Illinois outside Chicago and Springfield. So I will be a governor all over Illinois. But I think the more important part to the intent of your question is, I'm going to utilize that facility. you know, the idea of where you lay your head at night during what time of the year is one thing, but I think the important thing is I'm going to utilize that wonderful historic mansion to the extent of, now back to your earlier question in regards to job creation. You get this Korean company that's looking to locate a solar power panel plant manufacturing facility between Indiana, Wisconsin, or Illinois. As you do in the private sector, I'm going to entertain them for dinner. And I'm going to entertain them for dinner at the governor's mansion. There's a whole, that is a tool for the public of Illinois. I'm going to utilize the governor's mansion for the small business. You know, not just when NFIB hosts their cocktail party there that they rent it out. You know, and I'm glad for those kind of things, but I'm talking about the governor and that facility to use it. I'm going to use it to convene the summits that we'll probably have to have if this state public pension bill is constitutional. I'm going to use, so I guess the real background to it is I'm going to use it, and I understand you could say pandering things about, you know, where my seat of government, and directors and agencies and all of that are, but I think it's an example of how I've governed as the treasurer of Illinois. You know, my chief of staff is here, my general counsel is in Springfield, my director of unclaimed property is here, my director of Bright Star 529 is here. You know, I think that that's an appropriate way you should do so while having respectful staffing at your Chicago
I
metropolitan
thought
office.
Kyle's from Peoria. Did he move here?
Oh yeah, he moved here.
Gotcha.
Well, that leads into my next question, which is too much of state government centered in Chicago? Should more of it be in Springfield?
Yeah, to answer too much, that may well be for what other constitutional officers have to look at. And you look at them. I mean, they're all from Chicago. Well, Riverside. So I will play the geographic dot game with you, Bernie. But yeah, they're Chicago based, and that's where they live. I mean, I've got the advantage of being halfway mark. You know, I'm Pontiac, so rural Shinoa. All right, Pontiac, Springfield, Pontiac, rural Shinoa is the halfway point. And again, I'm not saying this from a pandering, patronizing way, but literally the seat of government is in Springfield, and my attitude is that your directors should be here while having appropriate number of directors or deputies or assistants in the Chicago office as well.
You made some tough comments about Amtrak service and state funding of it if they're late or if they don't work well. We've also got this ongoing, as you know, program of building high-speed rail that will go through Springfield. Are you threatening state funding for Amtrak, and what does that do?
Don't go putting those words in my
mouth.
mouth.
I'm just asking. Okay, I'm asking.
Just ask your question. Don't go editorializing.
And where are you on the high-speed rail? Are you behind that?
So now the
And are you
question.
behind
I
the
see
funding?
what I'm saying is that's why I'm very careful how I answer questions because that video camera's running.
I understand that.
Okay. Your question is.
Are you in support of continuing state subsidies to Amtrak, and are you in support of the high-speed rail program with state and federal funding?
Okay. The high-speed rail program. I am in support of the infrastructure for the high-speed rail, meaning the rail grade crossing improvements that have been taking place. Now I want to be careful, I don't know if they're done, but have been taking place. And I know probably better than most because the single longest corridor of Amtrak service was through my Senate district. So I'm very, very sensitive and very aware of that whole issue. And I do support it because I think it's appropriate to your earlier question with regards to infrastructure. The whole grade crossing and rail upgrades are not just high-speed rail, but there are also needs for passenger rail, freight rail. So there is additional benefit in that type of infrastructure improvements. Yes, I support that. To your question with regards to Amtrak, I am very supportive of the idea of moving into the ability to have better transportation and mass transit. And I am supportive of the idea of what Amtrak should be. Now, without going into specifics, but when you have someone that's looking at waiting for a train in Pontiac to go to Chicago, and the train isn't there for 7 hours, tells me something's inefficient. Now, there's all kinds of reasons, okay? You know, the Texas Eagle, okay? Freight trains, okay? But these have been going on for years.
Are these people
I
telling
mean,
you this
if it-
happened, or did it happen to you?
Oh, it happened to me. One of them, people are telling me this happen all the time. You look at the city of Chicago, departing from Chicago. All right, I get snow, I get free, I get it. But when you're actually looking to depart from the start, and it's hours and hours late. So, the answer to the question is, I'm supportive of Amtrak, but before I look at the public's money going into helping subsidize it, I want a standard of performance that's going to be accountable so that you don't have something like a high-speed rail that's going to get you someplace faster and you're still late.
Should Illinois be hosting a state fair in 2014 in this day and age?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that it's a part of, and I'm going to further elaborate on that. I think we should host a state fair. I think it's a part of helping to add attention and accolade to our major industry, and that's agriculture. I mean, I do believe it, because that's an area that is starting to diminish in regards to recognition and so forth. I do support a state fair. Now, I also happen to believe that it should be managed such that everyone should pay something when they enter. Now, I introduced the legislation a number of years ago, and I understand it was even to the point that reporters, maybe they get freebies, or Senior Citizen Day, maybe the fee is a quarter. Maybe on Veterans Day, the fee is 25 cents. But what I see is that there's a lot of freebies out there. And I think that a state fair, similar to Minnesota, should be a fair that's going to be able to be accessible, affordable, but not giving about a whole bunch of freebies. People that are workers at it, maybe they get an exemption because they're staff and vendors, see what I'm saying, those kind of things. I'm sorry.
Do you need two of them?
That would be evaluated in this whole analysis of admission and so forth. And that would be a question to have, but it would have to be something that would need to be evaluated from a finance standpoint.
So you're saying you would end the free days, and no offense, but even the veterans, because that's, pretty much of a third rail kind of a thing.
Well,
isn't it?
okay, I get it, but you know what I said, an example of 25 cents. And maybe someone sponsors it. Maybe someone sponsors it. So,
Okay, but no free tickets anymore.
why, we want to have a state fair. I don't think, what is, and I pay my way in the state fair. I stand there and pay whatever it is, $7.50 or $12, whatever it is. I pay that. But the idea of somebody, I think, even the nominal 25 cents, it's the approach that I think we have to have, because these are fair questions to ask.
Are you a gun owner?
I am a gun owner, and I have a FOID card. And I've not yet had the ability to get into the training for my concealed carry, just because I've been a little busy right now, but I do intend to do that.